Here we are in our trip to the Dales, and we've taken a lovely little campsite called Mason's Campsite in Appletreewick, which is very near to Burnsall Bridge. It's a place I visited for many years before. 30 years ago I used to come with my family previously and paint and fish here, and I love it. Lovely local beers and good food, beautiful area to paint, and very varied in different times of the year. And here we've chosen autumn for these wonderful colours which I'm showing you. Here are a few of the paintings I've done in years past. You see Burnsall Bridge as well, with a young child here, and now we've only got a few days here, so we're just going to do a couple of paintings. One oil painting, a watercolour with pastel over the top, and in this beautiful view here I'm just about to do a watercolour for you, just a plain watercolour, possibly using China graph pencil at first to get some of the dark trees, because we haven't got very much time, only a few days over this trip, but loads and loads of photographs to use later on, which will be smashing, won't it? So here we are then in the Dales part of the Fens and Dales film. Mason's Campsite nestles just up into the valley, and it's only about 2 or 3 miles from Burnsall Bridge itself, so it is walkable if you're able to do that. But for me, one of the main advantages is not only its attractiveness and small size, being very cosy and private and very friendly, but also its proximity to the water. We can put the caravan right down within 20 yards of the water, which with my mobility difficulties means that I can reach it very, very easily. A little bit of fishing and I can just sit there and paint and sketch, all within easy reach. New owners have taken over the site and are very forward thinking. The toilets and showers are now refurbished, and to give further incentive and interest for new clients, they're also holding even thematic weekends such as this one for Halloween when we were there. And of course there are many lovely little quaint and pretty villages and towns to visit, plus places of interest such as Bolton Abbey.
To the Priory. Have you been in the Priory before?
Many, many years ago, I think, but it's so many years ago now I can hardly remember.
Well, I'm sure you'll be interested to know that before Henry VIII came to the throne, the Priory was twice as big as you can see now, and the stone wall which is in front of us, that was put in at Henry VIII's time to separate this part from the rest of the Priory. And,
so how old is the Priory? When was it originally built?
The Priory was started, I think it was 1170. I'm not quite sure of the actual date. I keep having to look up in the guide books. But the building itself speaks, I think, to all our visitors because the history, it brings history in touch with everyone who comes into the Priory. And today especially has been, with it being 25th of October, it's the Battle of Agincourt, St Crispin's Day, and today we've had a commemorative service because Lord John Clifford, who was from Skipton Castle, actually fought at the Battle of Agincourt, and he's buried in the ruins in front of the high altar, and his stone is under the model, actually in the Priory. He came back to Skipton, and he then went back to France and fought at the Battle of Meur, where he died at the Battle of Meur in 1422.
And as we travelled up and across the moors from one place to another, we came to a little place called Blubber Houses and found this lovely cabinet and furniture maker there. Some superb craftsmanship. I always like to see the art and craft of the area as well. And wherever I go on my trips, whether abroad or in England, I like to sample the local fare as well as seeing the crafts and interesting things of the area. And of course the local pubs in England, especially in an area like that, are renowned for their good home cooking and wonderful beers such as Black Sheep and Old Peculiar. Yes, please.
This winter it'll go
Very
on.
happy.
Yes.
No, it's not, you know, it's snow and snow this winter.
On the website
Jeff, is it? Tiny thing.
not anymore.
I've never been, no. I've never seen it.
Bit low, look at the camera, that's it.
Look at the thing they spoiled. Camera up the kitchen, the thing they spoiled.
Right. We will do with this, yes. That's right. Right, ready then? You've got to try and catch some more. Ready? And I'm going to go underwater and do it. It was good to see this young lad enjoying the pursuits of the countryside and not just stuck to the computer or watching television all day and all the time. Nice to see some of the old ways back again. And he seemed to relate to me and took a shine, so I decided to show him how to use the fly rod, and he even watched me paint a bit later on as well. I'm sure it will help him for his future and give him some incentive and more ideas. His dad seemed to like fishing as well. The countryside here is as beautiful as I've been anywhere in the world, Canada, Quebec, Scotland, but it doesn't quite have the wildness of France. Obviously there are far more people, it's far more crowded in this country, and although it's very beautiful, you don't find the masses of chestnuts and walnuts and mushrooms this time of year that you'd normally find over there. But apart from that, what a place to be. So we've shown you many of the delights of the area already. Now let's get down to some painting. Well, now we're going to do another mixed media piece, an explore experiment. We're going to do this lovely one of the sun shining through these leaves here in the water. I'm going to do a similar one with water and pastel for a demonstration shortly. But this one I want to do in watercolour in the background and then work acrylic over the top and play with sponges, which we haven't used much before. Sea sponges. Okay, I'll start with a nice big oval mop, our standard palette of watercolours. This lot, just dampen them first all round to get them going, so I've got plenty of colour. Some of them have got water on already, so they're not too bad because they've been used fairly recently. And I want to do the colours fairly strongly because I'm going to put both opaque and transparent paint over the top. In other words, I'm going to be painting acrylic paint thickly and thinly over the top. So here we go. We'll work with our standard watercolour techniques, our light colours first. So I'll start off with some aureolin yellow. Go all over this bit here quite strongly, as I say, because I want to put the light colours back in as well. Lovely colour, wet into wet. So I'm not bothering about texture too much at this stage, and I'm not bothering about the little light bits that are left behind either. I'm just going to cover everything up and put everything back in with the opaque paint afterwards. Now aureolin yellow is a beautiful yellow, as you can see. I've got some marks on this paper from earlier, so I just want to use it for demo for today. About halfway done, not even going to bother drawing it out, just going straight for it. And I'm going to paint wet into wet, to put more oranges and lovely colours back into this shortly. Blend it all out. This piece of paper I had on the board ready when I was painting in the Dales only a few days ago, and then what happened was some oil paint got onto it, so I should use it up for this job. So let's really explore this wet into wet, lovely texturing we can get, colours we can get going underneath here. Cadmium oranges. And the stronger yellows as well. I mean, that was aureolin yellow, but what happens if we use some chrome yellows now? Look, quite different to those cooler colours. We could probably get a very nice abstract watercolour this way anyway if we wanted. Maybe we don't even want to bother going on with the acrylic, but leave ourselves that freedom. If we start nice and loose like this, we can finish as tight as we want. So let's start nice and loose and really enjoy getting into this. Look at this lovely explosion of watercolour we can get. Very light yellow greens going through, lower down. So light colours first, watercolour, dark colours afterwards. Explosions of colour. Let the colours vibrate into the picture, all nice and wet. Oranges, cadmium orange, and then some Indian red into that. Let's get these lovely reds going on the ground. Indian red going on down here at the bottom of the tree. Coming actually into cadmium red and bright red. Beautiful colours. Really enjoy them. Push them a bit. Let them spread out in here. Painting vertically so you can see it, but you know, you'd have more control if it was flat, but let's not worry about control at the moment. Let's just enjoy. And then some cobalt violet going on around here. And I'll say we can get some beautiful colours just playing with these, can't we? I'm going to come back on with stronger colour in a moment. Nice greens going on. Get rid of the white paper. So we've got the effect of light now, a lovely abstract picture. I have to decide how we're going to do the tree. I could do it with China graph pencil, I could paint it in, we'll see in a moment. Obviously that doesn't want to be wet into wet because it's going to be much harder edged on this. Maybe you decide that you like painting like this so much you don't want to put anything else, any other colours onto it, just leave it alone. Maybe you just say, well, I want that abstract quality, Pete, and just leave it alone if that's what you want. Lovely working with these big oval mops, look. Start to get the effect of the waters. We're rippling around here a bit now. Going down into there. Some crimson coming in. Lovely colours. It's almost nice as it is as an abstract, isn't it? And then we'll take some quinquedrone gold and a bit of ultramarine and start to paint in some of these foreground darks into the amongst where the leaves are on the ground here. Same back there, we'll take a bit of the purple and warmer colours. Start to put in this very dark area where the tree goes here. Yet maybe I don't even want to do any sponge work. Maybe I'll be quite happy with it as it is, because it's rather fun. There's a lovely loose watercolour. Our trees coming down here, reflecting into there. Bringing in some much deeper, warmer colours now to this reflections of the tree here. Still painting wet into wet, just feeling this reflection coming down into the ripples here now. Tickling with the end of my brush, just letting the water do the job as it drops down. Keep watching where these colours are when you've got them on your brush. If you see them somewhere else than they're meant to be there, put them in. Lovely warms. Just starting to dry off a bit here now, so we can just start to get a little bit more texture into it perhaps. But I don't want to hit the branches yet because we're going to get a furry effect, and we don't. Right, hopefully the paper's dry enough now to start to take some more detailed work. So I'm going to come down to a number 8 round and a rigger and make a nice deep colour. So we'll use some purple, a bit of Prussian, and a little touch of burnt sienna to give a slightly toned down effect, and just start to paint in these branches. They're quite big. Make a tracery of these little lines, and even those growing up down here. We're playing with the textures of rough against smooth, light against dark, and warm against cools, and again starting very, very loosely, gradually tightening up as we go along. to stop wherever we want. Right, now we're ready to start doing some texturing, but first of all with watercolour. So I'm going to make some texturing in the darker areas with a sponge. Let's look at our sponges and see what textures we want. I think that one should do it. Just on the edge of the sponge like that, and then twist the sponge lightly. Don't keep the texture the same, otherwise you'll end up with a pattern, and you don't want a pattern, you do want actual texture going on here. So the dark I'm putting on here first. At the moment I'm just using watercolour because I'm painting the dark onto the light, which is what we do with watercolour. When I want to put light on the dark, I'm going to have to use the acrylics, which are not. So on we go with the greens. These trees in behind. As long as we're putting darks on, we're alright. We can put lights on afterwards. We might have just left it as it was, because I mean I did like that lovely wet into wet effect we had earlier. But we're going a bit further, and we're now using some of the watercolour in almost an acrylic way, and that we're painting a little bit more thickly as we bring some of these leaves across. Get the effect of light. Right, I think we're at a stage now where we can just about start to think about the lighter colours. But before I do that, I'm just going to put on a bit more of the oranges and reds. Look at these lovely effects we can get, look with the texturing. Sharper against the soft background of wet into wet. Get this dappled sunlight coming through. Just spread a little bit into the water, just pull it across to get the feeling of some reflection going on. More warmth in there. Look how easy that is. Just delicately, don't go too hard. Crisscross, verticals, a little bit of horizontal, and then follow around the shapes of the swirling water a bit. Okay, that'll do for our watercolour. Now we need to do some acrylics with the same sponge. In this case we're going to start with our lightest colour, which is white, and gradually add paint to that. First I want the sky in here, so I'm going to go back in with the texturing where the sky is, up here, and put in some pure white in this case, into here, as if the paper was never wet into wet. Quite big splotches. Paint should be dry enough now to do that. See that lovely effect we can get immediately. That comes down, getting a little bit darker as it comes down from the sky. And using the sponge, twisting it slightly now to get these swirls of the water. And once we've got those textures, then we can look at making some lighter ones of the other colours again. For instance, the very light yellows, creams and greens. Just come back over it again. And there you see a very quick way to produce a rather fun autumn scene. I nearly always carry the camera with me now, not only for taking photographs of paintings and just thoroughly enjoying myself and able to share with you, but also watching out for wildlife such as these rare diving ducks here. What you will notice is the terrific difference in different types of weather that we had during those 4 or 5 days there, from really wet rainy days and almost stormy to these lovely clear bright mornings and evenings. Where things compose in the square of the frame.
Can you see the white well?
Just well enough, yeah, but I don't want to see it too much, do I? I just want to see it just enough to see what I'm doing. That's the hill going across there. That comes down into there. Then we've got that little hill going across there. Trees.
Is that the mountain?
Yep. Coming down. That's where the river comes up here, all the way through to here. So you see how fast I work. Straight in with the river. There, comes up here. All the way up there. Back through to here. That branch.
Is that filming whatever you're doing?
It is. Goes down there. Grass comes in here and here. That's it, we can start the painting. All we need. Now start with a big brush because I want to take the sky. The sky's not very exciting now, but we'll have a go. And I want to mix a cream first of all. So you remember that colour I told you about, the yellow ochre that I said was rather nice?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to put that over first. Plenty of it, lots of paint. Because there's a sort of yellow ochre sky here at the moment. Coming right down through into there. Bit of terps to thin it down and whack it on. And then we'll get the blues and other things into it in a minute.
Do you speak so people can hear you what you're doing?
That's right. All the time I'm talking what I'm doing for two reasons. One is to tell the people on the camera, and what's the other one? I said there are two reasons I'm talking. One is to tell the people on camera what I'm doing, and what's the other one, do you think? Who's sitting near me?
Me.
So who might I be talking to as well? Me. Yep. So I'm telling you at the same time, so you can learn.
So they can hear me as well?
Oh yeah, all the questions you're asking. So if you want to ask questions, you ask them and you'll be on the film asking these questions, watching me. We'll start with this yellow. So we've just got to cover the canvas quickly to get the painting done quickly in case the weather changes, because we are painting a moment in time. We're painting this time of day, so we've got to try and capture it before it changes, haven't we? Before it rains heavily and I can't carry on even. Oh, before I do that, actually, I will take my camera, because this is always a thing we should do. We should always...
Is it a waterproof camera?
Not this one, no. We should always take the camera and... it's all steamed up as well. It's one of those humid days. Very, very damp, humid day. Clean it up. There we are. Now, a bit of luck. We'll get the scene that I want. Just in case things go wrong. There we are. So if things go wrong, I can always finish the painting later now, can't I?
Why, if it rains, you have to get inside?
Yep. Then I can always go back to it when I get home, paint it at home. Right, first thing is to get rid of all this canvas as quickly as possible, get the colour on. So I'm going to try and do this whole big painting in about an hour. So I've got to work very, very quickly, get the paint on fast, cover big areas like this. On this rather grey day, should be tighter. There we go. Still not right. This little easel is very old and probably about 20 years old now.
Do you have a new one?
I've got new ones at home, yes, but I like my old easel. It does the job and it's very light. But it has a job when it's got a big canvas like this sometimes. Right, that's got my basic coat on with that white and yellow ochre. Now I've got to start looking at the colours in the sky, and I can see that there's a very light blue, so I'm going to add a little bit of cerulean blue up into here.
What will it mix in with colour then?
Yeah, I'm just blending it in. The way I'm using the brush is called feathering, because you tickle the surface of the canvas like a feather look, and it just blends things in softly. And then there's a slightly greyer colour higher up, and I'm going to mix some blue and some brown to do that. In fact, I haven't got the right brown on it. What is this one down there? Blue and some brown, a little bit of burnt umber, and I'll get some of that browny colour for the clouds up here coming in. Feathering that in, get the soft effects of this very damp day in the Dale's day. I'm going to paint the trees through that area where I'm painting at the moment, so I'm not to worry too much about that. A little bit more warmth into it, so a little touch of red into there. Go down here, and a little bit warmer grey coming up with this horizon here. I've got a feeling it might still rain on us yet, so we've got to try and work fast. And there we've got our warm and cool greys going on. And up here as well, even warmer, a little bit warmer. A bit browner. Yellow one could touch of it. Just feathering it in over these brush marks. We've almost got our sky down there. Right, that's given us our soft grey sky. Now let's look at this background of the hills. We'll make a warm pinky. What's the colour back there? There we go. Nice soft grey for those hills that are in the mist up there. Because when things are further away from us, they tend to be a lot bluer, they're hazier and a lot bluer.
What's that, you're not further away, they're a lot bluer?
Yeah, because of the atmosphere, and this happens because of the little water droplets in the air. in the air, when it's very misty like this, the mistier it is and the rainier it is, then the more water droplets there are, and that makes it mistier, and therefore it goes bluer and hazier into the distance. Clever lad, you soon took that up, didn't you? You understood me. You're very good, because some adults wouldn't understand what I just said. So you're doing very well, you're learning all the time. You'll be able to paint like this when you go home, won't you? Right, now a bit bluer down there, to be a little bit cooler. So I'm going to paint a bit more blue down into this. Yep. The young lad managed to watch me till I got partly through the painting and then got rather chilly and wanted to go out with his parents, which was good. I think he'd seen enough to get some enthusiasm going, and later on he came and asked me for some paper so that he could do some drawing as well. Yellow ochre and a little bit of blue to make a greeny colour. I want a slightly stronger green, so I'm going to add a little bit of emerald green.
I think it's just a red ribbon picking off the tree paper.
Yeah, down into the river. Different green there again. These brush marks we'll get rid of around the horizon there. Even a little bit of pink. Down into here. We've got these soft greys and greens going back into there. Now a little warmer. The trees coming in there.
Are you in the mountains now?
Yes, just about finished those mountains. Just coming down to the water river now here, look.
I'm cold.
Cold?
Yeah.
You want to go and get yourself a jersey and then come back? You can go and come back when you like, you're not stuck here. I've got all my jerseys on, this smock on. This is a very warm smock, it's a fisherman's smock. So it's a very special one. It keeps me warm in the winter and cool in the summer. These little lines of the distant walls in this grey.
How long will you be here for?
As long as the painting takes, but about an hour I think, so if you want to go and come back you'll be alright.
Yeah, can I just go get a baking sandwich?
I think you need to do something, yes. The water's now resisted on there, it's not very good. Drop of water that's resisting against the acrylic paint, that's not ideal. Down ready to paint the leaves down there. Got some of this grey going on the water surface. And look at the vertical strokes before you do in water. Look at the vertical strokes before you do the horizontal. You often get much better reflections that way, like that look.
Wow,
Yeah, it comes on quickly, doesn't it?
good.
Need to go away a few minutes and it changes. This water dripping on my canvas. Any warmer now then? We've got a bacon sandwich. Good. Nothing like a good bacon sandwich out here in the morning.
Adam?
Nothing like a lovely bacon sandwich in the morning to get you started off.
Uh-huh.
Let's get that ripple going on the water. Look. These little stones and rocks to paint. Now we've got the stone colours there, and the reflections. We'll put some darker back in later. Blue going on behind this bit. Right, let's go back up to these lovely colours up here now. We want to start on the... We've got these lovely autumn colours coming through here. We've just started on cascading down and through. And right up into the sky. Trying to what this painting is going to be about, these lovely autumn colours. Painting out, it's not easy to have. Well, here's another experience for you. The rain is hitting this oil over the acrylic primer. And I've never had it happen before, but it's actually lifting off everywhere. Quite interesting textures, but it's not what I want at all. And this drizzle is just pockmarking my whole canvas. You can see it shouldn't, because once the paint's on there, it should resist the water. It should get underneath and just lift it like that. I normally start from the horizon, as you saw here, and then work my way outwards in tone, from the middle tones at the horizon towards the lights and the darks. With oil paints, at least you can work darks and lights whenever you want. With watercolour, of course, you've got to normally work towards from the light to the darks, unless you're adding pastel on top or doing mixed media. I enjoy being outside painting on plein air whatever, but this wasn't the nicest of days at all. It was very drizzly, and I found that the paint was actually resisting and lifting as some of the water droplets came off from the clouds and from the trees above me. So what I decided to do, having taken that photograph earlier, when I got back, was to do some studio work on it and finish it more to my satisfaction. Well, there's still some pot marking and quite awkward texturing on some of this painting from the other day painting out on plein air. Normally get away with it with whatever weather, but in this one I'm not quite so sure, and I feel I'd like to work on it a bit more. I've got the basic colours here. It would be acceptable to some people perhaps, but I'm not quite happy with it yet, so I'd like to work a little bit longer now I'm back in the studio. And I do have a photograph to work from as well. Not that the photograph has anywhere near this lovely light that's in this particular painting, but we should be able to do something with it. The first thing I want to do is work up these oranges a bit more. Some of the lovely reds that were in the colours there that I didn't really get enough to pick up on the day. Darker reds amongst it, even though I wouldn't be far off on the day itself, I know. There's also some more purpley colours in there. So let's really go to town and start to try and find some more of these colours that are in here. Paint's a couple of days dry now, and it's actually fairly dry on the canvas. So some lovely pinks going on amongst this that we didn't get that day, and also of course once we get these colours going they're going to reflect in the water as well. And of course these colours being cool and warm will help to enhance each other as well. So I'm going to put quite a bit more colour, even than I saw on the day, into this painting now. A lot more of this warm purple going on right through it in fact. To make some of these colours a bit darker than I had them, come down a tone or two to make it seem lighter behind as well. And to paint autumn, let's have some autumn colours in. I'm going to bring some of this higher key colour back in to get an effect of light. It's a nice damp, wet sort of autumn day, so I don't want really defined edges. We'll see if we can get a bit more life into this artwork. A bit more broken colour to make these distant hills and trees work even better. I do want this feeling of this very damp, horribly damp in fact, day that day. And the light shines between these light and dark leaves up here. That's given us quite a lot more to think about, hasn't it? Really look for these colours. I mean, you'd think it would be fairly obvious with all these oranges and mauves and purples, but actually it's not. We've really got to look for these cools against warms and see how these, even here, are working. Yeah, that's much more the effect of that rather misty autumn day. Although I think we should be able to see colour easier on the spot, just sometimes it's you know, you've got it in away from it, you can see it more clearly. And it made a huge difference to the whole painting. I'm going to go back with some of these darks for the branches, some of the shadows and the water, the depth. Hopefully that's brightened things up quite a lot, quite considerably. Perhaps we need to look at these leaves in the foreground a little. The light's reflecting off the leaves in places there. Again, we don't want, it's quite a low key light, don't want too much. So don't give in too soon on your painting. If it's not working, keep at it for a bit longer, for that extra quarter mile just to make the whole journey. Don't take second best. If you're not happy with something, don't stay with it, change it. The difference these colours are now making as I find them. Well, I reckon it'll be about there. That'll do for that one. Although the lower woodlands and valleys are absolutely gorgeous, there was also some wonderful wildlife and scenes to be seen up on the moorland. Even flocks of grouse flew alongside the car at one stage, couldn't quite get the camera up in time. With the photography and the art, not only do we have the figurative aspects of what things are, but the abstract as well. We've got the rough and the smooth, the light and the dark, the cool and the warms, and the different textures such as these wonderful reflections in the water. So we've got a beautiful evening here, and just time to have a little go at doing a pastel. So we'll have 10 minutes, set the pastels up next to me as the sun sets, and on my Ongras pad have a little go at getting the sunset before it goes with plenty of colour. First thing to do is sketch out a quick composition. I'm going to come from this corner here. There's a lovely curl of rocks coming around there. The river comes on across here. Horizon line back there. Be very, very quick now to catch this last light. Tree over here. Hills coming up behind. Right up through there. Quick as that then. Work out a nice blue grey background there. You've really got to be fast, so we're blocking and blending very, very quickly. river coming through with this low light. I'm going to have a bloody bit of trout fishing here tomorrow with the fly. Right down here. Blend in with my fingers. There we go. Now these pinks that are coming just around the corner into the water, blend those in very fast. Look steady as the light goes. You'll see just how fast we can work with this technique. Light turquoise sky. Coming into the river. Just catching the light. Got to work so fast with the light going like this. All these rocks very quickly put in. Green coming around on the grass just there. A little bit of that green going up into the background to the hills behind. You can see just how quickly you can work up a mood and an atmosphere of the light. And this low light evening, sun setting quickly. As the sun goes down behind there, we've got a lovely line of cream catching in the sunlight here too. A little bit lighter up there. We just about captured the essence of this light. So you see just how quickly we can catch a scene. About 10 minutes. Just time to try and get the quintessence, the very essence of the picture. Here we are, not a lot of time. Very enjoyable. There we go. That'll do. That'll do. If you're going to do the pastel over either acrylic inks or watercolour, you've got to make the watercolour or the painting a lot stronger than you normally would for a watercolour, which is usually very light and transparent and luminous. But the pastels are quite strong things and they can look out of place across a very delicate watercolour. So you'll see here I'm being quite strident and quite strong with the use of the colours. Also using a slightly textured paper here, a knot rather than a smooth hot press, so that I can get the texturing of the leaves going across the watercolour afterwards for the lovely autumn colours on those surfaces of the branches. This means that if you ever lose a watercolour, and what I mean by that is you ever overwork it, it becomes muddy and too messy, then you can go back with the pastels afterwards when it's dry and work them in. Remember that you can work pastels with water as well. You can actually paint with them and blend them into the watercolour as a part of its surface rather than just being across the top of the painting. Always have a camera there and try and take a photograph when you start your painting off. You never know what might stop you. Anything from a sudden rain shower coming or an emergency nearby or something going wrong. In which case you can then refer back to the photograph later on when you get home, or in this case even do some more pastel on it if you want to as well. I managed to finish it by going back the next day. The pastels that I'm going to use are my favourites of all. In fact, as we're working in Yorkshire, here we are using the Unison pastels, which are actually handmade in Yorkshire. Whilst I was out painting one day, Rosie decided to take the car and go and visit one of the local villages. She came back with amazing tales of somebody who was selling wood carvings of life-size ducks for £8. I said, surely you mean 80? She said, no, definitely 8. Anyway, it's a very pretty village, she said. Should we go and see it tomorrow? So here we are having a look. And indeed, here are those very ducks. I was a bit suspicious at first, but now I realise why they could be done so cheaply. And I'm not all that happy about the idea, really, to be honest. I did speak to some of the other local craftsmen and artists as well, and gathered that they felt a little bit the same. The thing is that this is sweatshop labour, that these pieces are made in Thailand and shipped over for a minimum price, cheaper than we can actually buy the wood for over here. Now, of course, everybody has to make a living, and of course, you know, it's nice for people to buy things cheaply, but it puts people like myself out of business who have to charge a reasonable price for the materials that we can't get that cheaply, and our time, plus the fact that these guys are working almost for nothing, for a pittance, over in Thailand. So it's a double-edged sword, isn't it, really? But I have no qualms in thoroughly recommending the local butchers, not only this one but many of the others. I have never eaten such lovely pies as these, the steak kidney full of meat right to the top, no space in between, like these awful cardboard things you buy at motorway service stations and so on. Absolutely abysmal. Here's real meat, real flavours, really country sausages, even the pork pies with cheese in. Wonderful varieties, beautifully baked and great value for money. It is very interesting to see what the local artists are producing. The commercial work, the prints, the prices that they're getting, far higher prices than we get over here on the east coast in Lincolnshire. Even the prints are selling for more than I would actually be able to charge for an original piece over here. So it's rather disappointing in that way, but great to see other people's ideas and different ways of working. And then we go into a local studio and a lovely artist that I met, who's now going to give you a little talk about his work.
Yep. Hi, my name's Phil Fraser. I'm a watercolourist here in Grassington and Wharfdale, Yorkshire. I paint mainly landscapes, rivers, moorlands, woodlands, a lot of painting outside, but principally studio technique, laying down washes, using masking fluid. My work is a bit more vibrant than traditional watercolours. I used to live in Spain and like a high key palette.
And if you're a lover of the good old days and tradition, just lap up this interior of this sweet shop. Beautifully presented, as many of the shops are there. It takes you back to the old days with such a huge variety of lovely goodies as well. And so we'll come back to exploring the area near the campsite and wherever we can get within range of the car, and try and find some more spots to paint. To isn't long before we go up and find a smokery up on top of the moorland, where the view just opposite is absolutely fantastic, and I decide not only to buy some of the smoked sausages and meats and cheeses, but also to sit there and have the smoked mackerel and fresh bread and some of those items for my lunch, as well as paint a lovely little watercolour, which I hope you'll enjoy watching. I've set up with a sheet of £140 Waterford knot paper, so a little bit of texture, nothing fancy, not even stretched, just taped onto a piece of hardboard. If you're going to be doing a painting for a reasonable length of time, you want to be as comfortable as possible. So I always need to sit down, very seldom stand, and I've got my little portable stool that I can carry quite lightly and easily, and my easel or my small wooden easels, which are very light as well. I always try to make things as easy as possible to get things from one place to another and to be comfortable. Isn't it? Lovely scene, isn't it? Yes. It seemed a shame not while we're here. I sort of just looked down. I thought, well, you know, might as well. We'll be looking around for a scene. If it's already here, what the hell, you know?
That's right.
Start with washing in some areas of cerulean blue, and then bring in some cobalt a little bit higher up as the sky gets deeper blue into the atmosphere, and a very thin wash of either yellow ochre or in this case raw sienna, which I prefer. Blending them in gradually one to another and with water to have control of the cloud edges, so we have lost and found edges. The greys and underneath of the clouds I usually make greys with my tertiary and my primary colours, a blue and some brown. In this case we're using either burnt sienna or some burnt umber and a little ultramarine blue to give us that nice grey which we can make either cooler or warmer, either way, to place underneath those clouds. I do keep a few man-made greens in my palettes, both in watercolour and in oils. In this case in watercolour I've got emerald, cobalt green, sap green and some viridian, and I have one or two more greens in my oil paints as well. But most of all I try to mix as many greens as I can with the yellows and blues that I've got. There's something you want to do when you have some time is test all the yellows in permutation with all of the blues that you've got. And when I say yellows I even mean the golden yellows and some of the browns as well, such as yellow ochre. It's amazing how many lovely greens you can make yourself without having to buy others. You can also make some lovely greens not just by mixing in a palette but by dropping one colour into another. So if I use my aureolin yellow first and then drop some cerulean in, I can get a much nicer and brighter and lighter transparent green. In this painting I'm doing all my wet into wet washes and glazes first, letting the wet glazes drop in to give soft misty effects into the background and create an atmosphere and effect of light first of all. I know where things are going to go, I know where the trees and details are going to go in the dark areas later. I have drawn them in lightly already. So I want to cover all of the white paper and get these distant misty atmospheric effects before letting the paper dry and gradually adding on blending and adding on harder edges of the details and things in the foreground. The basic rule, especially in England, is that things in the distance will be much hazier, bluer and softer than things in the foreground. The only exception to that would be a sunset or sunrise, when it might be warm in the background and cool in the foreground. It's usually a rule too that things are more in focus and more in detail in the foreground due to our eyes being able to focus on them and see the detail. In this country this is partially due to the amount of damp weather that we have and the water droplets in the air, as you'll hear me talking about to that young lad when he watches me do the oil painting. It's also why the light in Mediterranean countries seems much brighter and things much clearer, because the atmosphere is so much drier, so you can see further without this haze. Well, there's my basic undercoat and washes done, and all I'm getting is an effect of light to glow through the paint and glazes that I'm gradually going to put on top now and bring the details out subtly bit by bit into the foreground, something that my next visitor doesn't seem to understand or appreciate technically at all, and seems to think that in a matter of 10 minutes, which is about all I've taken on this painting so far, I should be able to get something totally recognisable or paint details in step by step as in a jigsaw. Hello? Yes, don't worry. There's such a lovely view, even to the smokery, and I thought, well, yeah, I'll have a quick go at this. Well, shall I do an oil, shall I have watercolour? And I thought, well, no. Get straight into a watercolour on it. Lovely colours. Just
Good time of year for this sort of thing, isn't it?
well, that's one of the reasons I chose to come up, because I knew this area, apple tree wick and so on, from years past. I thought, well, I'll get a lot of photographs, even if the weather's bad, I'll be all right somehow.
Well, it doesn't look like it, but it's not supposed to really, I suppose, is it really?
What's that?
Well, that doesn't look like that, but...
Well, not yet, no.
no, yeah.
I'm just building up the underpainting. I know where I'm going with it. Yeah. The effect of light at the moment. I think I've got the sky there at the moment, but
Yeah, the sky looks beautiful.
I'm just about to, just working up bit by bit. Watercolour, you've got to work the lights up first, as you probably know, so I'm doing that first. And then
Alright. Whole job. You're not moving around, still in this weather.
I'm just going to go get myself in Paris to do takeaway teas and coffees in the cafes. I'm just going to
okay.
get myself
I'll
on.
leave you to it.
Yep. Come back a bit later and I'll be done, yeah. Just, the wind's getting up a bit now, it's going to be a nuisance because I've got to change the for a rock on the back of that. So I've got a rock on that. It's such a pity that he couldn't come back or didn't come back to see the finished work about 3/4 of an hour to an hour later, because I think he would have been quite surprised. People often have this problem with my work. I've seen it when I've been painting very loosely in flower gardens at Burton Agnes, and I've done a very loose acrylic ink wash and then tightened up with pastel afterwards, gradually pulling the flowers out. They think it's some kind of chimpanzee or kiddie's painting at first, and then they come back in half an hour or so and are amazed at what's happened. But it's this method of mine of working loosely and gradually tightening up so that you're in control. You're in control of the abstract as well as the figurative and can stop whenever you wish. Anyway, maybe he'll see the finished painting on my website or on the film later. As I was saying earlier about mixing greens, there are such a variety of greens from warm to cool. There are warms and cools in almost any colour you can have. A red would have a cool towards the purple, or a warmer red towards the orange. A blue, again, would be warmer towards the purple, but bluer towards cerulean. And the greens can be greener as in a turquoise, bluer and greener as in a turquoise, or they can become warmer as in a browny grass grey by, say, mixing your raw sienna with some cobalt blue, which will give you a lovely deep green. And here you've got to look very carefully at those greens and be aware that the greens, even in the distance, are still going to be cooler and have more colour than the greens in the foreground, which will be much warmer and stronger.
Virus database has been updated.
Earlier on we were painting wet into wet all the time. Now we're painting wet over the dry, and we're getting some harder edges and more detail. But within that wet into the dry, we can still drop wet into those wet areas and get varying textures as well of lost and found edges. And you can see now as I'm making the warms warmer in the foreground and the colours much stronger and darker and richer, that those colours in the background that were very delicate are now seeming even more cooler and more delicate in comparison to those things in the foreground, which is what the gentleman earlier couldn't appreciate, that the painting was going to gradually work up into these stages and become more detailed as it went on.
Virus database has been updated.
And so where there was just one flat colour wash of green earlier, I now start painting in the dark shadows in between those rocks on the left and stones to turn it into a stone wall, even though the colour was very similar to the grass, because they're all mossy, as the grass is. And now the final details of the tree on the left, gradually building up the light washes and light shining through, leaving areas of space in between for the sky. And finally this tangle of darker branches, again which gives a much lighter background, some enhancement. course I speeded up the film for this because you don't want to see me painstakingly putting in every twig. It's more fun for you to see it all done at speed and how the painting just comes together and comes alive. There are just so many ways that we can paint. There are so many permutations we can do. In this case, pure watercolour, nothing else but. We could have taken this painting and done it with pastels and water, with pastels over the watercolour, with Chinograph pencil. With all sorts of different ways this painting could have been done. Originally I was going to come and sit down and do an oil, but I decided that it lent itself more to the watercolour technique than the oil technique in this case. And there we are, the finished work. I do hope you enjoyed it. And so we come to the end of our little autumn visit to the Dales, and some of the sights and places that can be visited there, and the wonderful foods and company you can meet. Maybe we'll meet you there one day, or maybe you'll see me painting there one day. It'd be nice to chat to you. Right, bye for now then, and let's get on to some other painting.